The Rolex secondary market is experiencing unprecedented corrections in 2026 as artificial demand collapses, gray market premiums evaporate, and reality finally catches up with speculation-driven pricing that never made sense. Smart collectors are watching certain Rolex references plummet in value as the hype bubble deflates. Authorized dealer waitlists disappear, and buyers realize they've been paying premiums for artificial scarcity rather than genuine watch quality or investment potential. We're talking models that commanded 20–40% over retail just months ago, now selling below retail as desperate flippers cut losses and the market corrects toward rational pricing, reflecting actual demand versus manufactured hype. Today we're revealing 10 Rolex models experiencing dramatic price drops right now that smart buyers should absolutely skip until the market stabilizes and true value becomes clear. Number 10. Rolex Air King 11/6900. The Rolex Air King 11/6900 is tumbling from $8,000 secondary market peaks towards $6,500 and $7,000 as buyers realize it's the least desirable modern Rolex. This polarizing timepiece features controversial dial design with oversized 3, 6 to 9 numerals and aviation branding that many collectors find unappealing and awkward. The 40mm case without date complication creates odd positioning between Oyster Perpetual and Explorer that satisfies neither demographic effectively. The discontinued status creates uncertainty about long-term value, as Rolex replaced it with new reference-changing design that collectors prefer. What's driving the freefall is buyers finally admitting the 11/6900's design never worked, and the aviation heritage remains purely marketing fiction. The secondary market shows weakening demand as sellers outnumber buyers willing to pay premiums for polarizing aesthetics and questionable branding. The lack of date complication limits practical utility, while the design prevents versatile wearing across formal and casual occasions effectively. Smart buyers recognize better Rolex options exist at comparable pricing without the 11/6900's controversial aesthetics and limited appeal throughout collections. Number 9. Rolex Datejust 36 Two-Tone Diamond Dial 11/6233. The Rolex Datejust 36 Two-Tone Diamond Dial 11/6233 is crashing from $12,000–$13,000 peaks toward $9,500–$10,500 as buyers reject polarizing aesthetics. This controversial configuration combines two-tone construction with diamond dial, creating formal aesthetic that many find gaudy rather than elegant. The 36mm sizing feels undersized for modern preferences, while the diamond markers limit versatility across different wearing occasions and environments. The two-tone construction appeals to narrow demographic while alienating buyers preferring all-steel or solid gold configurations offering better versatility. What's driving the freefall is market realizing diamond dials and two-tone construction age poorly in collector preferences compared to cleaner alternatives. The resale challenges become obvious as potential buyers significantly decrease when targeting niche aesthetic that mainstream collectors actively avoid. The diamond markers lose value in secondary market where buyers prefer standard indices maintaining broader appeal and future resale potential. Smart buyers recognize standard Datejust configurations offer better long-term value without polarizing aesthetics limiting future buyer pools dramatically. Number 8. Rolex Daytona Zenith 16520. The Rolex Daytona Zenith 16520 is plummeting from $35,000 speculation peaks toward $23,000–$26,000 as reality corrects irrational collector premiums. This vintage reference features modified Zenith El Primero movement that Rolex slowed down, creating complicated servicing requirements and costs. The transitional status between manual Daytonas and in-house 4130 movement doesn't justify massive premiums over modern references offering better everything. The collector speculation driving prices was never sustainable, as fundamental watch quality doesn't support valuations approaching in-house Daytona pricing. What's driving the freefall is buyers recognizing they're paying vintage premiums for 25–30-year-old watches requiring expensive servicing regularly. The modified Zenith movement creates service complications and costs exceeding modern in-house Rolex movements that replaced it for good reasons. The Patrizzi dial browning that collectors paid premiums for is actually deterioration and damage devaluing any other watch category. Smart buyers realize modern Daytonas at $15,000 retail offer superior movements, materials, and warranties versus vintage 16520 at inflated pricing. Number 7. Rolex Daytona 11/16500 LN White Dial. The Rolex Daytona 11500 LN white dial is crashing from $30,000 $35,000 gray market peaks toward $19,000 $22,000 as artificial scarcity ends. This hyped reference commanded double retail purely from Rolex's manufactured scarcity and authorized dealer allocation games, creating speculation markets. The ceramic bezel and modern specifications don't justify paying $15,000 $20,000 over retail for watches that will eventually normalize toward reasonable pricing. The gray market collapse shows artificial demand evaporating as production increases and authorized dealers actually sell watches to customers wanting them. What's driving the freefall is Rolex increasing production while gray market speculators simultaneously dump inventory as premiums evaporate rapidly. The realization that paying double retail for artificial scarcity rather than genuine watch superiority creates losses as market corrects. The white dial preference is purely subjective and doesn't justify massive premiums over black dial variants offering identical specifications. Smart buyers recognize waiting for authorized dealer allocation at retail makes infinitely more sense than catching falling knives in collapsing markets. Number 6. Rolex GMT Master 2 16710 Pepsi. The Rolex GMT Master 2 16710 Pepsi is tumbling from $18,000 $20,000 collector peaks toward $13,000 $15,000 as buyers choose modern alternatives. This vintage reference features aluminum bezel that scratches and fades unlike ceramic bezels, maintaining appearance on modern GMT Master 2 references. The 3185 movement lacks modern refinements, including blue parachrome hairspring and improved power reserve that current calibers deliver consistently. The hollow end links and folded bracelet construction feels cheap compared to modern solid link bracelets that Rolex finally implemented. What's driving the freefall is buyers realizing modern GMT Master 2 at similar pricing offers better everything without vintage compromises. The aluminum bezel's patina that collectors romanticize is actually wear and deterioration that would be considered damage on modern watches. The vintage servicing requirements and parts availability concerns add uncertainty and costs that new watches eliminate through warranties. Smart buyers recognize modern ceramic GMT Master Descent at $10,000 retail offers superior value versus vintage 16710, requiring immediate expensive servicing. Number 5. Rolex Milgauss 11CT400 White Dial. The Rolex Milgauss 11CT400 White Dial is crashing from $9,500 and $10,500 peaks towards $7,000 $8,000 as discontinued status hurts rather than helps. This quirky reference features anti-magnetic protection that modern life rarely requires anymore for practical watch wearing and daily use. The discontinued status creates uncertainty about long-term service and parts availability from Rolex service centers going forward indefinitely. The 3131 movement lacks chronometer certification that all other modern Rolex movements include, making it technically inferior despite comparable pricing. What's driving the freefall is discontinuation, revealing the Milgauss lacked genuine demand beyond limited enthusiast interest and speculation hoping for appreciation. The distinctive design with orange lightning bolt and green sapphire polarizes opinions, limiting buyer pool in secondary markets dramatically. The lack of chronometer certification and discontinued status make this objectively worse value than current production Rolex at comparable pricing. Smart buyers recognize better. Rolex options exist without the Milgauss's quirks, limited appeal, and uncertain long-term support going forward. Number 4. Rolex Skydweller Blue Dial 326934. The Rolex Skydweller Blue Dial 326934 is plummeting from $17,000 $18,000 peaks toward $13,000 $14,500 as buyers reject poor value proposition. This complicated reference features annual calendar and dual time complications that competitors deliver better at significantly lower pricing consistently. The two-tone construction adds cost without functional advantage, while the 42mm case wears awkwardly large and uncomfortable during extended wear. The Saro system using bezel for settings feels gimmicky rather than elegant, requiring manual consultation for basic operations constantly. What's driving the freefall is buyers finally admitting the Skydweller offers terrible value compared to competitors delivering superior complications. The annual calendar requiring manual correction yearly is inferior to perpetual calendars that Grand Seiko offers at lower pricing. The thick case construction and heavy weight make this uncomfortable for daily wear, despite Rolex marketing suggesting refined elegance. Smart buyers recognize Grand Seiko and other competitors deliver better complications at lower prices without Sky Dwellers' compromises and questionable value. Number 3. Rolex Cellini Date 50515. The Rolex Cellini Date 50515 is absolutely collapsing from $15,000 retail toward $8,000, $9,500 secondary as nobody wants dress Rolex. This dress watch disaster features basic movement with date that competitors deliver better at fractions of cost without precious metal pricing. The white gold construction adds material cost without functional advantage, except weight that makes wearing uncomfortable during extended periods. The Cellini line's unfamiliarity creates confusion, as Rolex buyers want oyster cases and sport aesthetics rather than dress watches. What's driving the catastrophic freefall is buyers finally admitting nobody wanted dress Rolex, and values reflect actual demand. The 40–50% depreciation from retail shows the Cellini represents Rolex's worst value proposition and biggest market failure in decades. The lack of bracelet option means additional cost, while competitors include quality bracelets as standard at lower total pricing. Smart buyers recognize buying Cellini at any price represents terrible decision as depreciation continues towards $6,000 to $7,000 realistic market values. Number 2. Rolex Datejust 36 11/16/200. The Rolex Datejust 36 11/16/200 is dropping from $7,500 to $8,500 peaks toward $5,500 to $6,500 as modern production floods secondary markets. This discontinued reference features 36mm sizing that many buyers consider too small compared to modern 41mm Datejust preferences. The smooth bezel creates plain aesthetic without the fluted bezel's distinctive appearance that defines Datejust identity for many collectors. The Jubilee bracelet on discontinued references shows stretch and wear that modern improved bracelets address through better construction techniques. What's driving the freefall is current production. Datejust flooding authorized dealers eliminating secondary market premiums that artificial scarcity created. The 36mm sizing limits appeal as market preferences shift toward larger watches, and the discontinued status provides no collector premium. The smooth bezel variant lacks the distinctive Rolex identity that fluted bezels provide, creating anonymous appearance limiting desirability. Smart buyers recognize waiting for current production allocation makes more sense than buying discontinued reference at prices approaching new models. Number 1. Rolex Oyster Perpetual Briggs 26,000. The Rolex Oyster Perpetual 36 12/6000 is experiencing the most dramatic freefall, dropping from $9,000, $10,000 hype peaks towards $6,500 to $7,500 reality. This hyped reference commanded massive premiums purely from colored dial social media hype and artificial scarcity that never reflected genuine value. The time-only layout means paying Rolex premiums for absolute most basic watch functionality without even date complication justifying pricing. The trendy dial colors that created initial hype are already showing depreciation as fashionable colors fall out of favor quickly. What's driving the catastrophic freefall is hype evaporating as buyers realize they paid premiums for basic watches offering nothing special. The gray market collapse shows colored dials never justified premiums as fundamental value proposition remains terrible for time-only luxury watches. The increasing authorized dealer availability eliminates secondary market completely as buyers simply wait for retail allocation at $6,200 rather than paying premiums. Smart buyers recognize the OP36 represents peak Rolex hype bubble, and falling knives should be avoided until market stabilizes. The current freefall will likely continue toward retail pricing as gray market premiums completely evaporate and reality replaces speculation. The Oyster Perpetual 36 proves that Rolex hype creates bubbles that inevitably burst, leaving buyers with depreciation and regret. Skip all these models right now and wait for market stabilization before considering any Rolex purchases in 2026.